Hey, good morning, you guys. Thank you so much for joining me again. Thank you so much. I apologize again. In my last video, I talked about audio was out. It was a whole fiasco, if you will. But how ironic because we are talking about telepathic communication. So, what was I doing so emotionally and for so long last night with no audio, you not being able to hear me? It wasn't a bit. I promise you, it wasn't a bit. It wasn't to prove a point or anything. This was all about telepathic communication, and I did just that. I think the energy definitely got across one way or another, but I will, okay, speak it because that's only right. There were some good things. I was so upset because there were some good things that I was saying, and I was being very theatrical and giving you insight to different areas, and I thought it was a really great video, but alas, we here again, so it's totally okay. All right, so say hi to Khan. We are doing this video today on telepathic communication, and I did want to preface that yes, we do telepathically communicate, and in many ways, it's not immediate, right? It's not like real time. We're communicating with each other just through our minds, and we can understand. Some people can. Some people are very, very good at it, and with what we do most of the time, like when we're practicing, a conversation, or we have things that we want to say, but we kind of want to do a test run, right? We want to see, how this would play out. Like if I said this to this person, how would it play out? We kind of practice in our heads telepathically, right? And we communicate telepathically. And really, what's going on with that is basically like you're talking to their higher self because they might not get it immediately, but you're talking to their higher self, and their higher self will decide what to deliver to that individual. And your higher self, of course, you're having that conversation. So that's what it is. And I did write about this last year, and now we will come on and share it with you guys. And with this, we'll just kind of get right into the reading here. And it says, did you know that about 90% of your communication is done telepathically? Seriously, okay? What are you doing when you're reading something? You're working, you're forming opinions, and you're getting ready to say something verbally. You're telepathically communicating, all right? Um, Let me explain to you how some broadcasting or communicating to someone telepathically works on a visual level, not to confuse you, right? But this is just to give you a picture so we can get better and we can use it and it will help us, all right? And to be honest, right, people have been doing this for a very, very long time, and nobody really likes to bring this up as a serious topic because it is hidden, right? It's perceived as a secret. And culturally, it's a part of like um, quiet culture, not quiet cultures, but a lot of cultures, right? That's how they communicate. So that's another topic we'll get into. And so let me just disclose the more technical strategy called channeling or tuning. And many people make intentional or subconscious frequency adjustments to ensure their output or input is adjusted to a certain channel that best serves their energetic being. So this is like the term that people use. People think often like channeling is just for channeling those who are dead. So I kind of changed the word to tuning because I don't want it to be confused. But we tune to different frequencies throughout the day. I think that's agreeable, right? And people that are psychic, those who are psychic, are able to turn into a broader range of frequency channels than us. And yes, but it may not be healthy. So that's why we kind of warn against psychic, but really, truly, I don't want to bash anything that is psychic because I'm a little bit psychic myself. Psychics have this gift, right? It is a gift, and we shouldn't demonize it whatsoever. It is a gift, and technically, we're all a little bit psychic, but the true psychics will tell you it is, it takes practice or experience with it to be able to cultivate it in the right manner, right? And so we're all a little bit psychic. We cannot demonize the psychics because we all have it. They're just really good at tuning. But the caveat, right? It might not be healthy to be tuned into certain frequencies 24/7. So there is actually a requirement, right? It has to be rest. You have to have a lot of rest if you're participating in psychic frequency. You have to have a lot of rest. And you need to have a lot of quiet space or meditative frequency that is used during the off hours. So it's very important. Again, you're getting a broad range a frequency, while we might only have like a few frequencies that we participate on a daily basis, okay? Which can also be burnt out, and I will get into that in a little bit. Um, so yes, others, they might like high energy frequency, and will tune into such some like money frequencies, right? Or creative frequencies. And these frequencies, we're like, how, right? How do I do that? So the frequencies and our time spent on these various channels adjust throughout the day. And where do they come from, right? Where do they come from? We actually create them. We create them. And so the God in us creates them, and each individual emits its own frequency. So if you are actively co creating a frequency, you will naturally line up with somebody who's also emitting that same frequency, and you create what is called a channel. Okay? Two frequencies becoming one. Okay, and this is where the term, right, two is better than one, that's really kind of where that comes from. Okay, so many people who are also tuning into that frequency, it creates a larger network and many different channels. And you can easily traverse through the different channels of that frequency by the strength of your own emission or the positive feedback of another's emission. So think about it like if you get a good thought and a positive thought, that will propel you. It gives you that motivation to go a little bit further, right? To kind of follow the train of thought, if you will. And each train of thought has stops. Think about a subway or something like that. The only difference with this train of thought is it can go left, it can go right, it can go diagonal at a whim, right? You can be on a stop and then you can go pew and go in the other direction. Okay, and so I did create a little diagram. Like this is, I'm like writing all these notes here from the last one, but okay, we have here you, right? You, and you can go on to these little stops. And I was just, scribbling on this. I'm sorry, I did draw it last night, but I'm sure that we can get the idea now that I've already emitted this frequency. So you create this channel, larger networks, right? You can traverse through them by the strength of your own emission or the positive feedback of another's emission. So this seems like a lot of hard work to be able to like conceptualize and manage. And the good news is you don't have to do this. This is just something to become aware of. And, God and our angels are fully in control of this process. So don't feel like you have to control it. This is just something to be aware of, and it actually might improve your psychic abilities or capabilities. Okay. Um, Yes, the more you do become aware, you can control and tailor your preferred frequencies. And this is an important point. Can certain frequencies or channels become overburdened or burnt out? Yes, of course. All right, but there is a fix to cool down the system, if you will. So, a warning sign that a certain frequency is becoming heavily populated or a channel is too frequently traversed, you might form some sort of ill emotion or what some people consider dark thoughts, right? And oftentimes these are emotions and energies that we aren't accustomed to producing, and we actually create a natural aversion to them. But really, the true thing that needs to happen when this dark thought starts to take place is just to become aware of that effect, right? And change frequencies. So, how do you change frequencies? You just really have to, I say, just like get up from where you're sitting. Get up from where you're sitting, distract yourself, start a new task, right? Or take a break with your current activity. And how do we know that we are safe and protected during these times of telepathy, right? Truthfully, many people are often unaware how their minds can affect others, let alone themselves. So this is why it's crucial to create a lot of time for frequent prayer and silent or listening meditation. And then, other than in prayer, you are not broadcasting or emitting, yet you are observant and intent upon peacefulness. So, this is what people say, like to control your thoughts, right? It comes from, a lot of meditation. But the prayer, you are actually broadcasting and emitting, but it's a prayer. It's the most beautiful kind of broadcast and emission, and I highly, highly recommend it. It's great for cleansing. It's great for clearing energy. It's amazing, amazing, amazing to be on that channel or be on that frequency. super, super strong frequency as well. Okay. All right. So we will go ahead and continue here. It says here, what if I don't want to be tuned into anyone's frequency or have anyone tune into mine? It takes a lot of serious cultivation. You have to be very careful. And you need to create this oneness with God. And once you build a relationship with the Lord, you naturally auto adjust your frequency to this God frequency, which is my personal favorite. And people like to think of God as like a secretive being, right? A secretive being. He is, in a sense. He's very secretive. He will only tell you what you need to know, and is quiet, right? It's a very quiet, peaceful, peaceful, peaceful frequency, and you are well protected while participating in that God channel or God frequency. And so you can rest assured you are protected, your energy is safe, and you have an answer to nearly every kind of question you could have, delivered with quickness, or it might take you a minute. It will be on God's timing. But it's truly, truly amazing just to be conscious of that. As long as you're conscious of Him, thinking of Him, you know, checking things with Him, you're always going to be on that God frequency, and you'll be, kind of closed off from the world. Sometimes I even imagine like a blue curtain, like when I don't want, anybody in my thought space, right? If I'm thinking about other people, and I'm trying to have a private time, sometimes I'll just visualize closing the blue curtain, all the way around me. And, I ask God, I'm like, God, please, protect me. I'm thinking of some things privately. I do not want this as a broadcast, right? I want to just be speaking to you and checking things with you. And He will do that. Don't you worry about that. So don't worry. God's timing, and you must become a seeker, right? So to be able to garner these frequencies and to be able to access that God frequency, right? Become a seeker, try new experiences, meet new people, but most importantly, pray. Just start talking to Him earnestly in your heart for real, okay? And I get it. We are human, living in this human world. We truly thrive on connectedness with others. So that's why there are many physical representations of channels we participate in every day. So like you might have been thinking as I show you that this is a very poorly, poorly drawn version of a computer network, right? This is really essentially how computers work. And when we think of like algorithms and stuff on social media, this is really how it works. Because think about how you like something, right? You like something and that propels that thought, right? That post to other audiences. That's exactly how it works in this, right? As above, so below. This, of course, happens first, and then we've made physical representations of these channels. That's why we have TV channels, right? YouTube channels. We have our own little social media centers, right? little centers. And the physical realities of this life are actually created through and because of our own metaphysical frequencies and outputs. So that's amazing to see it, materialize, right? Materialize. So what's the point of all this? Why am I telling you? I'm just here to remind you, because this is something we've known all along. This is something we practice day in and day out. So I'm just, letting you know it's very important. Make sure you're conscious of your thoughts, because you do have angels taking everything down. You have a dark thought, you ask for forgiveness, and they cross it right out. So don't you worry, just be conscious, right? That's all. This is just a good reminder. I know we all vary, right? Very. It takes a lot of practice, okay? I'm working on it myself, all right? So what if I am an atheist? What if I don't believe in a higher power? It's a loaded question, and dare I say the possibilities are endless, right? You can just keep traversing through these networks and these channels. You'll find no end, right? You can go as deep, as far, as wide as you want, right? The possibilities are endless. I'm sorry. My tea is, I don't know why I do that. I get a little excited. Okay. Possibilities are endless. And yeah, it's in order, if you want to still remain protected and, safe and in pure energy and good thoughts, I would just recommend surrounding yourself with good people, family, friends, those you truly love, and emitting as much of that love yourself, as a frequency wherever you go, right? In the channels, right? Wherever you go, make sure it's a love frequency. It's always love, right? I would also recommend adopting an animal, most importantly, a cat. because they are very talented when it comes to negative frequency clearing and positive frequency control. And how, you may ask? You have to ask them. I don't know. I think that can be a good topic. But literally, yes, love my kitty. Little Kong's always next to me. I have one here, the other's outside at the moment, but you can tell when they're all three here, it's like I was on one. Like last night, like I was just getting like choo choo choo. I was feeling so powerful. That's why I was so happy with that stream, because I felt really clear and really good. Okay, so we're going to continue. Oh, and I said research further into the Lyran starseed family, but I'm just gonna delete that because, oh, whatever. I don't think I can delete it. Okay, we're just gonna continue. I will remove it. I was gonna elaborate on it, but since I'm not elaborating, we're just gonna leave it there. Okay. So there's some hot topic questions when it comes to telepathic communication, and I will go over those now. Can a coworker or boss hear my thoughts? It's a good question. Am I more frequently tuned in with people I'm related to? Another great question. And does sexual or non-sexual intimacy increase telepathic abilities between people? All great questions. I am going to answer them kind of all in one, and then I will give you, a little example from each if I can. Okay. You can communicate telepathically with anyone, regardless of relationship or knowing them personally. So it doesn't have to be your family, it doesn't need to be people you've been intimate with. It can be with anyone, like your coworker or something like that you've even never seen before if you're working remotely like I am. So yes, you can have a telepathic communication with anybody, even if this happened to me recently. Like even if you're connected via like social media or something like that, like somebody sees something you comment or something like that, you can actually like then you can relate on that topic. Something I thought I mentioned, but maybe I didn't. But it's probably coming up in here. Oh yeah, it is. Okay, let me just read it. Let me just read it. So, literally the next sentence. Regardless of knowing them personally, okay, simply by having an aligned thought. So if you too, this is all astral, but if you have like an aligned thought, boom, that little connection happens, right? And the channel can happen where you can communicate back and forth simply by just having kind of the same thought at the same time. Of course, you can, reject and, go another direction. You don't have to be, communicating with somebody, but by doing that, that's the point, that's the stop, if you will. And you can continue together, you can continue separate, either way, right? It creates the channel. Okay, so let me get into this. Simply by having an aligned thought, you are openly able to communicate and respond almost instantly. And it's hard to test this, right? Because it's often over long distances. So I don't know how instantaneous it is, and if it's more of just your higher selves doing the talking, and then, eventually when the time is right, in God's time, they get the download or the message, right? But I think most of the things that have been happening to me is mostly like back and forth. It's a little banter, if you will, which I have been enjoying. So you don't have to see or know what the person looks like to do this. It's true. Time also plays an important factor. So depending on how much time you have spent with that person, either by being with them physically, mentally, or researching them, watching them on social media, you can technically ping them whenever. And depending on the value of your time investment determines how fast or immediate that notice is felt and how immediate you or others will be able to elicit a response. So it's like really like a time commitment. I know time is like a construct and an illusion and all of that, but we can measure it in this reality right now. We can measure it. So time investment. So the example I was going to bring up with my family, like my mom always, like I'll be thinking of her, right? Or she's thinking of me, apparently. I'll be thinking of her, I'm like, oh, let me call her. Let me call her. And so I call her. She's like, oh my gosh, I was just thinking about you. How did you do? We're so psychic. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. She gets so excited every time I answer the ping, right? Because she's thinking about me. I'm like, oh, bung, bung, bung. I get like a little ding, ding, ding. And I'm like, okay, let me text her or call her, right? So she gets so excited every time. She's like, "How did you? I was literally just thinking," and it'd be quick too. It'll be quick, and this is because we've spent a lot of time together as family. Like we're committed, right? Committed to each other, a lot of time. Okay. So depending, blah blah blah. Okay, watching them, ping them, whenever. Depending on value, yes. Okay. In regards to family or friends, okay, I just said this. So this is what I was doing last night. I was going off on like a bunch of tangents, and then I would literally read it in the next sentence. So this video will be a bit shorter. Okay. Um, reaching out to that person either by text or phone. Okay. So in regards to family or friends, the ping usually results into reaching out to that person either by text or phone call. And in regards to sex, the same rule. Oh, I'm sorry, honey. I'm trying to hold you. The same rule applies. It must be actual intrinsic love or time you have committed to a person in order to communicate with them. So, sex or intensity of it or various acts, they do not actually contribute to this type of connection, despite maybe popular belief. And on a more severe note, like sexual immorality creates mental, spiritual, and physical pollution. So this is just a warning too. Of course, we're gonna tie in everything here, but with everything that's going on, people think that like these sexual acts and everything, they can grant one power, which again is not a real thing. It's literally an illusion that people think and create as an illusion. Um, but yeah, they think that these intensities or anything like that can, create access, right, to the ritualized person. It does not. Okay, it just all that does is create mental, spiritual, and physical pollution, and it's absolutely, difficult to deal with. So just, just don't do it. Other hot topic question: what if my connection with my spouse or significant other is not as strong as I would like it to be? So this is telepathically, right? Good question. So, despite the physical union between two people, any which way, you can still have two people, I should say, you can have, multiples. Sorry, I'm not trying to go there, but I put two people, but yeah, any which way, you can have more than two. So, despite any physical union, you still have individual consciousness that is truly operating, right, at different rates and different speeds from each and every person. So this is true. Everybody has an energetic signature. So everybody is on, a different frequency sometimes. Not all the time. We're going to go into that. So we're vibrating, if you will, right? We're communicating at different rates and different speeds. Even your spouse, right? Even if you're very alike and you might agree on most things, communication can still be difficult. So this is like the hardest topic, right, between couples, and I'll tell you why. So we talked about the notion that two become one, right? The husband shall cling to his wife, all right, etc. So despite the two consciousness streams, you're actually operating most of the time out of one channel. So how hard is it to communicate when you're communicating at different rates out of the one channel, simultaneously, emitting the different frequencies at different rates and speeds? So the frequency output will actually align most of the time. Like you're going on different stops together, you're aligning most of the time, which is actually a very beautiful thing. But communicating between two in the same channel, it's very, very impossible. I would just put it like that. And so you're not doing this all the time. That type of communication is not all the time, but that's why sometimes it's difficult to communicate together. All right. So when two people are working on different tasks and even have some healthy space between two mates, the two separate frequencies, which often connect when two thoughts align, but once they merge into the same channel, the communication is buffered again. Okay, but anyways, yeah, if you create that natural space from time to time, you'll actually begin to see, oh yeah, we can communicate more. And this is actually really common, like when you get into a little tiff together, right? And like how you like argue in your head, you're like practicing your argument in your head. That's what that is, right? Because that natural space is created, and then you can actually go back and forth and meet at the stops instead of just two become one and communicating out the channel together. right? But now you're coming from different directions, oftentimes coming from different directions, meeting at the stops, and you're moving through there, and then the channel in the middle is like the God frequency or what have you that you're meeting on. Okay, I digress. But it's common, right, with all individuals. It's not just spouses. So it makes it hard for people to tap into, grasp, and understand and or validate, right, the experience of telepathy, because we do this all the time, but it's just hard. Like, how do I even explain this, or like or it's just maybe something that's known at this point, and people just don't want to talk about it because they literally don't talk about it, right? I'm the only one here. No, I'm sure like there's a lot of theories and things like that out there on this, but um, just because a partner is not communicating frequently between, or partnership is not communicating frequently between one another, that does not mean that the connection is not strong, right? For the reasons we discussed, it is two consciousness communicating out of the same channel. So the emission or the output is stronger, right? And even if the emission is communicating out of one channel, it can branch off and start communicating in two different directions of channels with the same frequency, which is also a powerful, right? It's a helpful tool. And this is what we call the power couple dynamic, or the super couple. Maybe instead of using like powerful, we can just say super, because we talked about the circle seven power is completely an illusion. So if we want to empower ourselves, let's start saying super, or we think of another good adjective for that word. I think I'm gonna start crossing it out now, so forewarning you. And so this is another hot topic question, right? Did the worldwide pandemic have anything to do with creating greater telepathic power? So this is a thought that I've been having, right? Like I'm like this. I feel like this is picked up. Like I feel like I'm more out in the open with my thoughts. I feel like nothing is really private anymore. Why is that? So it's not because of the actual jab or the sickness itself, right? It's not the virus, because not everybody got sick and not everybody got vaccinated, but they're still experiencing this shift, right? So we all seem to be experiencing this degree of elevated consciousness. And simply put, during that time, which was a period of a few years, we think it happened like 1, 2 years. I was busy during that time, but it was several years that we went through this. We did not have a general noisy human interaction for a while. Okay, there was a lot of quiet, there was a lot of peace. Remember those pictures of like the empty streets, right? It was a peaceful time, if you will. I hate to say it like that, but it was. There was also an increased time spent with family and close friends, lots of jobs moving to remote work, and lots of economic health and stress, right? Even various degrees of stress with the lack of trust from the government changed the way we communicated with each other significantly. Okay? All of this actually created the need to communicate instantaneously and effortlessly, perhaps across long distances, and perhaps without opening up our mouths, right, and breathing on people. So yes, in short, the pandemic on a global level, and I think it's more in America, I can only speak to here, but on global level, had this ability heightened. And whether it was because of the sickness or the vaccination itself, I can't be sure. That's probably has to do with some other things that I don't know about. I can't speak on. Can't be sure. Yet the shift was there. So a lot of countries too, even before COVID, right? Countries like Japan, I can speak on that because I've been. People do communicate telepathically for a long time. This has been a very long practice, according to what I've learned, and because it is a practice of respect. And what does it do, you guys? It reduces the sound pollution, and it creates an atmosphere of intense peace. So, think about how nice peace and quiet is, right? When you go out into the wilderness when nobody's around, you hear just that silence or the animals. Such a nice feeling, right? So it's actually very common practice to just communicate, right? Use your body language, right? Your eyes, right? And many people are just quiet, in their heads. It's very beautiful. And lots of other cultures too. It's a lot of times a cultural or a family thing, or it's been cultivated because things I can't speak on because I haven't been there, but I've heard, right? Um, so can we tap into frequency, or can people tap into our frequency by sharing items, donating items, or receiving items from somebody? So this is interesting, right? We're kind of going into the occult with this one, and I will nip it in the bud here, right? Oh, we're going to clarify it right now. Occult practices, we often see witches, right, performing spells with locks of hair, or even using their personal belongings of another person, right? I'm using witches because it's a derogatory term, all right, at this point. Da-da-da. Practices. Hi, Mama. Meanwhile, me and my 3 cats, right? Oh my gosh. See witches, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Well, witches and spiritual practitioners are real, okay? This is a really an idea rooted in fantasy for good reason. So this idea of like the voodoo doll, right? That you have an object that looks like somebody, you can control them. So this is where the voodoo doll comes from, and I did hear a creator talk about this recently. Maybe some of you have seen the video as well, and I forget the creator's name, but I did interact with it with the page. But the voodoo doll topic. So where do voodoo dolls come from? Okay, so this is really, my mind was blown. I was so amazed by this. Um, it's ancient, right? Ancient African practice came from African culture where you have somebody like a doctor, right? Somebody who's a healer, and you go to them and you explain what's wrong. And they have something that's a note for you, basically, like no reading and writing. So it's like a little doll that looks like you to remind you of them, of the person you're seeing, right? And so you explain to the doctor, okay, my arm hurts. So what they'll do is they'll put a pin in your arm, and then when you come back to visit them for the reevaluation, for the checkup, if you will, they'll say, oh, yes, yes, okay, your arm was hurting, right? How is that? So literally just like a little note and a little reminder. And if it's not hurting, they take the pin out. They're like, okay, that patient is done. What else? Is there anything else I can help you with? Oh, my knee. Oh, okay. Let me put this here and tell me we're gonna do the medicine, right? Medicine is the most important part. And then when they came back, oh, how's your knee? They take the pin out if everything is okay. Okay. So that was where that came from, and so boggling, right? Of course, we've fantasized a lot of these topics, right? And so I will tell you the good news, right, is the items, right, do not hold the objects, right, the non-living objects do not hold, house, or store our energy frequency like it is often believed, because it leaks out, it falls off, it does not retain it, and it cannot give it back, right, using the fountain analogy, it's a non-living thing. But we can use energy to influence the object on a cellular level. So that's a little bit of a different thing, right? We can actually influence non-living things, or like water, right? Remember the experiment when people were speaking positive things to, like, I think it was water or rice, and the ones with the positive words, the rice lasted longer. The ones with the negative words, the rice rotted faster. I remember seeing that very long ago, and that just like struck me so hard in my soul. I'm like, oh my goodness. So that's something that can happen, right? Or the frequency of sound, right? It's really the frequency of sound. Think about the sand on the speaker box, how it creates these lovely dimensional patterns with the sound coming out. That's another example of that, right? Blah, blah, blah. Frequency. Okay, so we do know frequency, and a positive or negative energy affects these objects, and it might even change the composition of them on a subatomic level. All right, although a living being cannot become consciously aligned with someone else simply based off of acquiring an item of theirs, or even through a mutual exchange of currency. And this one I had to stop. I might have to redact this a little bit just because we do put so much time into earning that currency, right? Time and energy commitment, right? We put a lot of commitment into earning the currency. So there is a manner of energy exchange. People are a little bit insistent on this now, like, okay, exchanging currency could be a matter of energy exchange, where I can see how that is possible, right? But this is why a lot of spells and such require like a hair or living tissue from living cells. And this is what we must remember, right, is the amount of time, amount of love and energy and spiritual alignment of the thoughts that we are considering here. So when it comes to being consciously aligned or connected, when it comes to being consciously aligned or connected, so it's not, a matter of like, oh, I have this person's thing, like, let me meditate on it and let me focus and I will, become aligned with them or I can control them, right? That's a little bit of a scary thought, but that was like a very real thing, and people in the occult have been practicing terrible things to do with that. It's really false. They think they have power, which is just the illusion of power. It's really something that they're creating, and it's fugaz, if you will, okay? So, beyond science, all right, there is something to be aware of, which is the energetic signature of something, okay? Our belongings, clothes, and even hair will contain a certain energetic signature or energy field. And rather than an emission of frequency that can be channeled into, being these things are not animated or living, it cannot emit the energy enough to have a profound effect, okay? Although they do contain spirit, so if you would consider cells, like part of the spirit, in even small amounts, right? Everything in observable and unobservable existence contains spirit, and each degree of spirit will emit an energetic signature of its own. Excuse me. But it will not house, hold, or store your emissions, despite the fact that we may be able to influence non-living objects on a subatomic level with our intention, okay? So if it does not make much sense to you, that is okay, right? That's why these things are considered occult, right? And even more of a reason why we want to remain tapped into our God consciousness, so we are constantly protected and rightly informed. Trying to force or compel a non-living thing to channel its natural frequency to you or vice versa is ineffective, and it is warned against in instances of idolatry practices, right? It does not produce anything good or anything bad, it's just noise and energetic pollution. So that is where I will leave you. Of course, I had to tie it into idolatry because that's really what got me onto this topic. I don't know how I roped all of that in, but that was part of the problem long ago, right? It's expelling your energy. We did talk about that quite at length. Expelling your energy on an object, it just falls off, right? It's not good, it's not bad, it's just noise. So we'll leave you with that. We shaved about 8 minutes off. 8 minutes off. You had some 8 minutes more of theatrics last night. But I so appreciate you guys listening, and thank you for being present. If you're here till the end, thank you so much. I do very much appreciate that. You're so awesome for sticking it through. And I will catch you soon. We're going to be covering Ezekiel. We're getting back into the books. And maybe, right, if you guys have any questions, feel free to ping me. We can talk about some other metaphysical topics that you're curious about or you would like to learn more about together. I would love to explore different things. So please just let me know. We can try to fit them in there in between books, as I was saying. Okay, so love you guys. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day, and God bless you. Bye-bye.